Hey guys, welcome back to True Crime with Shannon, where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Alright, so I actually did a bit of coverage on the whole Rust shooting situation when I was doing some stuff on my blog last year. So I sort of followed this when it initially happened, and now that we have charges that have come down, I figured I would do a video on it. Before we get into that, let me pull up today's missing persons poster. Today's missing person is Madeleine and Nava. She's missing from Everett, Washington. It looks like her last contact was September 14th of 2022. She's a white female, 28 years old, 4'11" to 5 foot tall, 110 to 120 pounds, green eyes. Hair is brown with blonde highlights, known to be associated with a Lincoln Navigator bearing Washington State Plate BVV1053. If you have any information on Madeleine, they're asked to call the Snobberhonish, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, County Sheriff's Office at 425-388-3839. Or, of course, you can always call 911. Again, if you have any information or if you have seen Madeleine and Nava out of Everett, Washington, this 28-year-old female, please contact the authorities. So I know a lot of people have been heard about the news that came down yesterday that Alec Baldwin and the armorer of the Rust movie that was being filmed are going to be charged with involuntary unaliving after the fatal shooting of Halyna Hutchins on the set of Rust. So I'm going to kind of just go through this article real quick to make sure everyone's caught up. And I've pulled up a couple pieces I have from his interview I want to show where he initially spoke with the police and then where he spoke with ABC News, George Stephanopoulos. And of course, he's done a few other interviews since then. I know he talked to News Nation's Chris Cuomo recently. So, but let me go through this article and then discuss this a bit. And I'm actually curious what you guys think as well. This is from CNN. Actor Alec Baldwin, who fatally shot a cinematographer on the set of the Western movie Rust in 2021, and the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, will each be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter, prosecutors said on Thursday. The family of Halyna Hutchins, who was the film's director of photography, thanked prosecutors for their decision. It is a comfort to the family that in New Mexico, no one is above the law, the family said in a statement released by attorney Brian J. Panish. Baldwin has maintained he was not aware the gun he fired during a rehearsal contained a live round. His attorney called the prosecutor's decision, quote, a terrible miscarriage of justice, unquote. This decision distorts Halyna Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set, attorney Luke Nikes said. He relied on the professionals whom he worked who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. We will fight these charges and we will win. An attorney for Gutierrez Reed said he believes jurors will find his client not guilty. We were expecting the charges, but they're absolutely wrong. As to Hannah, we expect she will be found not guilty by a jury, and she did not commit manslaughter, attorney Jason Bowles said in a statement Thursday. She has been emotional about the tragedy, but has committed no crime. Okay, couple things so far. I completely believe Alec Baldwin had no idea there was a live round in there. Right off the get-go, I do not believe in any possible way that he had any idea there was a live round in the gun, and he did not mean to fire the gun, and he did assume it was a clean gun. So it was a cold gun, rather. That's what they call it on movie sets, apparently, cold gun. But unfortunately for him, this is why he's being charged with involuntary manslaughter. Does that mean that he's going to be found guilty of these charges? That's a whole nother thing. That's going to be for a jury to find. I have some thoughts on that, which I'll share a bit later. But as far as the fact that he doesn't think he did anything wrong, I completely believe whoever put the bullets in there, who put the bullet or bullets in there, should be the one who's being charged. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they have any idea who put a live round in the gun. So, since Alec had the gun in his hands, he was the one that had the gun that shot her and also wounded one of the other crew members, the assistant director, and then Hannah is the armorer who is in charge on that set with weapons. These are the two that are being blamed for this horrific accident. I don't think anybody is saying that it was done purposefully, at least not by these two folks. With that said, let me go through the next part here. Why 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter? Baldwin and Gutierrez Reed each face 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter so that a jury can decide which specific count may be more appropriate. New Mexico First Judicial District Attorney Mary Carmack Atwee said, if convicted, they will only be sentenced to 1 count, the prosecutor said. In either case, a conviction is punishable by up to 18 months in jail and up to a $5,000 fine, prosecutors said. But 1 count would involve a firearm enhancement or added mandatory penalty because a firearm was involved. In that case, the crime would be punishable by a mandatory 5 years in jail, prosecutors said. Charges against Baldwin and Gutierrez Reed will be formally filed by the end of this month, Carmack Atwee said. She will not be asking for the defendants to be arrested at that time, the prosecutor said. Baldwin and his legal team feel blindsided by the announcement, Nichols said. They were not given any indication Baldwin would face criminal charges and learned of the charges in the media, he added. Carmack Atwee told CNN her office was in almost constant contact with the opposing attorneys for about the last 6 weeks. They didn't know exactly what was coming, but they were aware that we were contemplating charges, and they were aware of what the contemplated charges were, she said. Baldwin has responsibility as a producer, the DA says. The district attorney said she believed Rust had a really fast and loose set, saying there was a lack of safety standards and live rounds on set. They were mixed in with regular dummy rounds. Nobody was checking those, or at least they weren't checking them constantly, Carmack Atwee said, and that they somehow got loaded into a gun, handed off to Alec Baldwin. He didn't check it. He didn't do any of the things he was supposed to do to make sure he was safe or that anyone around him was safe, and that he pointed the gun at Halyna Hutchins and he pulled the trigger. Baldwin was also producer for Rust and therefore had additional responsibilities, district attorney said. As a producer, he also had a duty to make sure that the set was safe, Carmack Atwee said, and that then as an actor that day, he should have checked that gun, checked those projectiles. And a lot of big name actors did come out after this incident happened, and they did state that Alec Baldwin is very experienced with handling guns on sets. So he should have checked the gun himself. And they say the protocols on sets is not only for the armorer to hand the gun to the actor, but for them to tell them this is a cold gun or whatever the situation may be. And they're supposed to show them by opening the gun, and the actor's supposed to also look and check the gun. So apparently by him assuming, and he does say that he assumed he was being told that it was checked and they said, oh yeah, here, this is a cold gun. He assumed. And unfortunately, you cannot assume when it comes to a gun and safety. What investigators have revealed. Hutchins was struck and unalived by a live round of ammunition fired from a prop gun being held by Baldwin, who maintains he did not pull the gun's trigger. Director Joel Souza was also shot and injured. No charges will be filed against Souza in relation to the shooting. In the summary of the postmortem investigation into Hutchinson's death, which was formally signed by the New Mexico chief medical investigator, the cause of death is listed as gunshot wound of the chest, and the manner of death is listed as an accident. Review of available law enforcement reports showed no compelling demonstration that the firearm was intentionally loaded with live ammunition on set. Based on all available information, including the absence of obvious intent to cause harm or death, the manner of death is best classified as an accident, the report concluded. An FBI forensic report said the weapon could not be fired during the FBI testing of its normal functioning without pulling the trigger while the gun was cocked. The report also noted the gun eventually malfunctioned during testing after internal parts fractured, which caused the gun to go off in the cocked position without pulling the trigger. The shooting has led to a whirlwind of finger-pointing and allegations of negligence from those involved. In an interview with CNN in August, Baldwin placed responsibility for the tragedy on Gutierrez Reed, who served as the armorer and props assistant on the film, and assistant director David Halls, who handed him the gun. Halls signed a plea agreement for the charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon, the district attorney's office announced in its statement Thursday. Prosecutors said the terms of that deal include 6 months of probation and a suspended sentence. On Thursday, Hall's attorney, Lisa Turco, released a statement in defense of her client. Absent no charges at all, this is the best outcome for Mr. Halls and the case, Turco said. He can now put this matter behind him and allow the focus of this tragedy to be on the shooting victims and changing the industry so that this type of accident will never happen again. Multiple lawsuits have been filed. In November, Baldwin filed suit against Gutierrez Reed and Halls and others associated with the film, according to a cross-complaint obtained by CNN. Though their respective attorneys, both Gutierrez Reed and Halls maintained they were not at fault and accused Baldwin of deflecting blame onto others. Now, there's Baldwin had the gun in his hand, and I'm going to play the interview that he had with the police, a portion of that, and then of course, and a portion of him speaking to on his first interview, media interview with George Stephanopoulos. He first says that the armorer Hannah handed him the gun and told him it was a cold gun. Then, when he talked to George Stephanopoulos, he said that Halls handed him the gun, Dave Halls. So it can't be both. So there's some discrepancies there, and I believe there's some other discrepancies as well. But I noticed that right off the bat by listening to both of these two interviews and replaying them, and I'm like, it can't be both, Alec. It just can't be both. And do I believe that they're all at fault? Absolutely. Because apparently, according to all three of them, Alec, of course, had the gun, and the only two on the set that were supposed to be handling the gun were the armorer, which was Hannah, and then Halls, the first director. So those are the two that were allowed to handle the gun. So they handled the gun on the set, and Baldwin had the gun when it went off. So thus, these were the three that have been held responsible for this accident. Gutierrez Reed also sued the movie's gun and ammunition supplier and its founder, who denied wrongdoing and alleged a cache of dummy ammunition were sold with live rounds mixed in. In October, Hutchins' family reached an undisclosed settlement in a wrongful death lawsuit filed against Baldwin and others involved in producing the film. Matthew Hutchins, widower of Halyna Hutchins, described her death as a terrible accident. In a statement at the time of the settlement, production on Rust was to resume this month with Matthew Hutchins joining as executive producer on the film as part of the agreement. Okay, so yeah, I'm glad that they mentioned the other lawsuits because I have heard that as well. I believe all three of them are at fault. And for those that don't believe that Alec had any fault at all, you have the gun in your hand and he did not check it. You could, when it comes to safety, you have to check it yourself. There is the armorer right there. For those that missed that photo of Hannah. So really, it comes down to the investigation showed that all three of these individuals are at fault for this horrific accident that cost Halyna Hutchins her life. And my issue is Alec, he doesn't seem to want to take any blame. And like I said before, I don't believe at all that it was meant to, that he ever would have fired that gun if he knew there was a live round in it. Not at all. That's why it's called involuntary. And the question we're probably never going to know the answer to is who put the live round in that gun. That really is the person that is responsible. But since safety protocols were not followed by the armorer, the first director, and Alec Baldwin, they end up being the ones that have to take the brunt of the problems. So that's basically in a nutshell that. So let me play a bit of his interview with the police right after the shooting happened. So here's a bit of the interview, his interview with the law enforcement detectives right after the shooting, and it's over an hour long. And again, I'll include the link if you want to watch the whole thing, but let's check out a part of it.
Long day?
Well, what's interesting, not to digress on some commentary here, is that we've done this for 2 weeks and we did it the right way every day. Every day. You're on a set, you rehearse, they bring you what's called a cold gun. The gun is either completely empty, the chambers, or there is a cosmetic piece. So, for example, if you're the camera, and this is going to sound silly and specific, but if I'm pointing a gun close to the camera, you want to see into the cylinder that there's material in there, cosmetic material. So those rounds are cosmetic rounds. They put them in, and you rehearse, or even in a shot when you don't fire. I pull the gun up, and you see there's some material inside the cylinder. They'd hand me a cold gun, no charges. They always hand you a cold gun with nothing in it to rehearse. And then, when you shoot, and if you are shooting loads that are flash loads, and they're usually in 3 denominations, quarter, half, or full load rounds, so that the flash is bright, and the sound is loud, louder, loudest. Full load is loudest. So if you're outside, you want a full load, bang, you want a loud sound. If you're inside, you can do a quarter load. Right before you shoot, everyone preps, crew puts the earplugs in, some put headphones on, the camera's there, very often there's a Lucite screen, but you're the camera operator, and there's the camera, so I should always shoot off camera. You never shoot into the lens. And you shoot, and there's a flash and a sound. Now, I went to lunch. She disarmed me. I sat down.
She being?
Hannah, the armaments person. She was always handling the guns, 99% of the time. So I would, if I had a cosmetic rifle with no rounds, I would probably hand it to one of her assistants. I'm sitting there. She disarms me. We go to lunch. We come back from lunch, and they hand me the revolver, the Colt.
And I just like so name. It's Hannah again.
They arm me, and you're assuming, as we've done every time, that it's a cold gun for the rehearsal. And I put the gag in the shot. You're the camera because I have a coat, and I have a holster, and I pull the coat over, and I kind of cup my hands like I folded my hands. And then I'm going to slowly sneak the revolver, the Colt out, and turn and shoot these other guys, or try to shoot them. I take the coat over the thing, the camera's there. I believe, my recollection is she was there, turned a bit, like talking to him. So I think she was hitting the right armpit. But this is all I know, and that is that I take the gun out in the rehearsal. Really, he wants it very dramatic and very slow. I'm trying to sneak up on them. I take the gun out, and as it clears, as the barrel clears the hole, I turn and cock the gun in rehearsal. I turn and cock the gun goes off. It's supposed to be a cold gun. Nothing. No flash charges, nothing. Now, this is a puzzle to me. This is making me very emotional now, but in my time, and I'm older now, but when I was younger and I was shooting guns in films, I've never seen a theatrical flash round where the material went through someone's armpit, came out their body, and hit somebody else in the shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if your department is prepared to go find out what comes out of his shoulder surgically. Is that a live round?
That's what we are actually looking
Is that a lot? Because it doesn't make any sense otherwise.
Yeah.
It hits her in the armpit, comes out her shoulder, goes into his shoulder, and he just told me on the phone, I talked to Joe. He said, they showed me the x-ray, and the shape of the thing in my shoulder is the shape of a bullet. Now, all the rounds, I was told, you need to verify, I think this is an important note, they take the gun, they enter and all the rounds that are in there were either dummy rounds, no flash, cold rounds, or rounds with a flash. In the rehearsal, there should have been nothing. It should have been a cold gun with no rounds inside or dummy rounds, cosmetic rounds, no flash. I take the gun out slowly, I cock the pistol, bang, it goes off, she hits the ground, she goes down. He goes down, screaming. He's like, Jesus Christ, and I'm going, and I thought that maybe sometimes the wadding can come out if you're closer to get a burn. Two actors who killed themselves with guns, with theatrical guns, John Eric Hexum and Brandon Lee, they put the live round in, and I'm told even with the flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed and die, which both of them died.
Right.
I think with Brandon Lee, there was a piece of material lodged in the thing that shot from or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember vividly, but my point is, I've been doing this, I shot enough guns in my day in movies, I've never seen this before. Every time we've done this, I'm here to tell you, to testify that every time we've done this, she's done it right. She cleaned the barrel, made sure nothing was lodged in there. We went hot when they were ready. You always announce, going hot. Crew gets ready. And then all of a sudden, you're the camera, and I shoot away from you. I sit there like, bang, 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 and flashes are coming out. We shoot the rounds. She cleans the barrel every time, and she checks that the rounds are all cosmetic rounds, or nothing in the chamber for the rehearsal. She hands me the gun. I'm assuming she's done it the right way. She's done it the last 2 weeks. I put it in the holster. I pull it out slow. We're rehearsing. We're not filming anything. I pull it out slow, turn, cock the pistol, bang, it goes off, and she hits the ground.
Say, who handed you your weapon in the day?
Hannah.
Handed it. Okay. And physically handed or put it in the holster?
Handed it to me.
Okay.
She would show me the gun.
Okay.
Or she'd say, cold gun. She'd say, test it, or some language to indicate she handed me the gun, that it was fine. And she'd say, do you want to check? Okay. And I always didn't want to insult her. I said, because we never had a problem.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'm good. So, and the first AD very often will ask, periodically, he'll say, let me check.
Okay.
And they'll have two people check for this very reason.
So basically, there's like a lot of information in this interview, and if you're interested in what he had to say after the shooting, I definitely recommend watching this all the way through. He actually didn't even know that the cinematographer was shot with an actual live bullet until like the end of this interview. However, he states that, this is where I'm saying, he states in this interview to the detectives that Hannah, the armorer, handed him the gun and told him it was a cold gun. He never says that Dave Hall handed him the gun that day. So, and then later on, that's not exactly the same story he tells to George Stephanopoulos, which we're going to watch next.
That day, I did exactly what I've done every day on that movie.
Baldwin was preparing for his next scene, a shootout inside this wooden church. Set the scene right before that happened. You're sitting in a pew in the church.
Right.
What's the scene supposed to be?
The scene is the two guys are there who have got me, cornered, and they think I'm shot pretty bad, and I'm kind of wilting, and they have a gun, and then the sound outside distracts them, and I then draw the gun, cross-draw out of my holster, pull the gun up like that, and start to cock the pistol, cut. I'm handed a gun, and someone declares, they said, this is a cold gun.
Dave Hall's?
The first AD. In my years on the sets of film, hot gun meant that there was a charge in there, and cold gun meant there was nothing in there. When he's saying this is a cold gun, what he's saying to everybody on the set is, you can relax. The gun is empty.
That's what cold gun means.
Well, cold gun means there's no charge in there. There could be dummy rounds. Everything is in her direction. She's guiding me through how she wants me to hold the gun for this angle. And I draw the gun out and I find a mark. I draw the gun out, I find a cut. And what's really urgent is the gun wasn't meant to be fired in that angle.
So if you're shooting directly into the camera lens, you're not aiming.
I'm not shooting into the camera lens. I'm shooting just off.
Just off.
Right, in her direction. I'm holding the gun where she told me to hold it, which ended up being aimed right in below her armpit, was what I was told. I don't know. This was a completely incidental shot, an angle that may not have ended up in the film at all. But we kept doing this, and so then I said to her, now in this scene, I'm going to cock the gun. And I said, do you want to see that? And she said, yes. So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
At the moment, the decisive
That was the
moment.
moment the gun went off, yeah. That was the moment the gun went off.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never. Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger. On day one of my instruction in this business, people said to me, never take a gun and go click, 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 because even though it's incremental, you damage the firing pin on the gun if you do that. Don't do that.
And Hall's attorney told ABC News that he was watching and agrees that Alec did not pull the trigger and that his finger was outside the trigger guard. So you have this Colt 45, you just pulled?
The hammer as far back as I could without cocking the actual
And you're
gun.
holding onto the hammer.
I'm holding that. I'm just showing. I go, how about that? Does that work? You see that? Do you see that? She goes, yeah, that's good. I let go of the hammer. Bang, the gun goes off.
So my question is, why did Alec Baldwin tell George Stephanopoulos that Dave Hall handed him the gun in this interview, and why did he tell law enforcement that Hannah, the armorer, handed him the gun when he talked to them initially? It can't be both. Granted, he does say that they both handled the gun on the set, but it was either Hannah who handed him the gun that day on set before this accident, or it was Dave Hall. So who did it? Who handed you the gun? It's a good question. And again, it is a tough situation. I think that something needs to come out of it for Alec. I mean, I have thoughts of maybe he can go on to do some sort of, if he's found for a lesser charge. Again, this is going to be up to a jury. Maybe he can do some sort of work with gun safety, do some kind of work, because since he's an actor, he can do that. He can work with film in that way and advocate and do a lot of safety videos, what have you. He could do that and maybe go off with some probation. I don't know if, I guess it's going to depend upon, what the jury finds. If they find him guilty of the full charges of the involuntary manslaughter, or if they go with the lesser charge. So, it's going to come up to them. But I mean, because of who he is, will that make a difference? That's a good question. I don't believe he's blameless at all. I believe he has to take some kind of blame. And where he says he didn't pull the trigger, well, he pulled back the hammer and it went off. So somehow when he pulled back that hammer and then he released it, the gun fired. So whether that's a malfunction or not on that sort of an older gun it's a Colt gun, I don't know, again, because I'm not experienced with guns. But a lot of folks have talked, like I said, a lot of experts. There's been actors who've been on set saying that they need to check the guns themselves, and there's a lot of gun experts who have talked saying that it could go off pulling back that hammer. And that being the case, he did involuntarily, commit this accident. But again, it was a horrific accident, but you can't just shoot somebody even accidentally and not have some sort of consequence from that. And I just feel like Alec doesn't take it as seriously as you should. I mean, I feel really bad for, obviously, I feel bad for the cinematographer Halyna's son and her husband. They're the ones that lost a wife and a mother. But I also feel sorry for Alex's children. He's got young children, and this is a horrific situation for all the families. And you have Hannah and stuff, but it's a toughie. It really, really, really is. And you can't just shoot someone and they die, and no one has to answer for that. And I'm sure in court, Alec is gonna have his arguments with his attorneys, and Hannah's going to have hers, and we already are seeing that the two of them are going after one another, because it's really it's sad. It's coming down to a blame game, and it's really all about a woman's life. And of course, Joel Souza, he was injured, but thank God he didn't die. But it's a sad thing, and I don't know if Alec apologizing and just saying, "Hey, I screwed up. I guess I pulled back that hammer. I didn't personally check to see if the gun was a cold gun like I should have. I didn't open it up, uh, what have you. Obviously, I didn't mean for anything to happen because, but it fired, and, obviously this horrific, accident occurred. But I don't know if that was advised by his legal team or not. But not to bring you know, his current, his history of the way he responds to situations in, but he doesn't seem to be the type who likes to take a lot of responsibility for an error. So I don't know if a lot of that's on him. But again, this is a tough situation, and I really think it is. But you have to be responsible when you're handling guns, and it comes down to that there was a lot of irresponsibility on that set, and Alec, Hannah, and Hall, the director there, they all are the ones that are really, it comes down to, they're the three responsible for the mishandling of the safety of this gun situation. And that's where it all came down to. That's where the hammer came down from. And again, we're going to see what happens, when it comes to trial, or if the state will offer some sort of a plea for these folks or not. So, but let me know what you guys think of this whole thing. It's a tough situation again, but I'm curious what you guys think of the accident on the set of Rust in 2021. So let me know in the comments. And with that said and done, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.